From the EQC studio, welcome to The Top Step with Ryan Rowland-Smith.
How we going, mates? It's Ryan Rowland-Smith. Welcome back to another episode of The Top Step. I am sitting here in the EQC studio. We've got a really good episode for you today. We're diving into a more of a serious topic with some of my guests coming up after the break. We've got David Aardsma, Eric O'Flaherty, and Brandon Morrow. We're talking about arm injuries, what they've gone through. That's the hot topic still as we kick off this season. We also have the How to Speak Australian segment at the end to bring this show back to the lighter side. That is at the end. You are going to learn how to speak Australian, brought to you by the Kangaroo and Kiwi. Special thanks to Emerald Queen Casino for making this show happen, and all of you too for subscribing over at YouTube, building this show, checking out all the extra content, checking out the full-length interviews with all my guests. All right, let's get into what we always get into to kick off every single show, and that is the top trends. All right, so this week in the top trends, I want to break down what we've seen from the Mariners. We are officially 1/3 of the way through the season. So at this point in the season, you start to head towards the end of May. You kind of understand who your team is. You kind of understand the Division 2, what you're up against, and you also can figure out what is going to be needed to have that last stretch run once you get to the trade deadline and once you get beyond that. So the good news is the team is ahead. They are in front of the AL West. That's fantastic. But how did they get there? These are my three takeaways from the first 1/3 of the Seattle Mariners season. All right, here we go. Number one, the pitching is the foundation. All right, we kind of knew this coming out of spring training. That was always going to be the strong point, was going to be the pitching. The starting rotation was ranked number one coming out of the gates. They got off to a rocky start in the month of April. They had like a 6.5 ERA the first half of April, and then they figured things out. Now, they've started to taper off just a little bit. There's been a couple bumps in the road, but that's kind of expected. When you are a starting pitcher and you get through that first month, this always happens. You get through that first month and you're really firing on all cylinders coming out of spring training, if you're injury-free. And then you kind of hit this point where it's like, man, this is a marathon, right? You can kind of see that Bryce Miller's last start was really, really good. But a couple starts before that, there was a couple struggles in there too. Logan Gilbert's had a couple bumps in the road. Luis Castillo had a few of his bumps earlier on. George Kirby as well. But the fact that you've got five guys that are doing what they're doing, the thing that stands out to me is the strike throwing ability. Brian Wu came right into that mix, and he has been 70% plus first pitch strikes. This is the number one team from a staff-wise when it comes to throwing strikes. They're number one in first pitch strikes and number one in strike percentage. Their strikeout to walk ratio is number one too. That's always a great foundation. When you can get guys, yes, there's stuff in there, don't get me wrong, but when you have the strike throwing ability, man, that is a great recipe for what you can forecast as the season goes on. So the pitching is the foundation of this team. The other part of this is too, look, the bullpen has been pretty good. They've slipped down to 14th in ERA. I'm telling you right now, Matt Brash and Santos, they were two big losses, and that's really starting to show because the depth of the bullpen's really, really getting pushed as we get in. The bullpen's not is just as susceptible, as the starting rotation when it comes to where you're at this point in the season. So the bullpen, they've slipped a little bit, but overall, you're looking at, from a staff point of view, they're overall they're ninth in ERA, which is really good. So yes, the pitching is the foundation. Now, let's talk about the offense. This is my takeaway from the offense. Some of the things that we wanted to see get kind of fixed up a little bit, and some of the guys we brought in, it kind of hasn't happened, man. This team is still striking out way too much. And the guys who I'm looking at here, which is, look, it could be part of the game. I talked about this with Cal Raleigh last year. The strikeout numbers are still really high. You've got Julio Rodriguez, who's in the top 10 in strikeouts. You've got Cal Raleigh, who's in the top 10 in strikeouts. And then you've also got Mitch Garver and Mitch Haniger in the top 40. So you've literally got four players that are hovering around the top end when it comes to strikeouts. That's just way too much. They're seeing a ton of pitches per plate appearance, fantastic. They're seeing a bunch of pitches per at bat. That's great. But they just don't have the on base. They're in the bottom five with on base. That has to be fixed. I can live with the strikeouts if you can have the on base to go with it. We're just not seeing that. The other part of this lineup as well is you want a little bit more of that dynamic factor. 49% of their runs this year have been scored from the long ball. Now you think, well, that's good. They're hitting a bunch of home runs. Yeah, but they're not hitting a bunch of home runs, and you still want those dynamic pieces in between that. We've dealt with Polanco's had a couple injuries, trying to get right with that hamstring. That's been pretty big effect. You've had Julio struggle a little bit. So the offense, that has been really the downside, as we all know. Is this what we're going to see for the rest of the year? I don't know. I think with the pitches per plate appearance and the ability to get on base, it's in there with Ty France starting to heat up. I think that second third of the season, I think they're going to get to some better on-pace numbers. That is for sure. Now, speaking of on-pace numbers, this takes me to my number 3 takeaway. This AL West, and this is the bright spot here, this AL West is a weak division. And this is the stat I wanted to bring up. Now, this stat is brought to you by ilovebaseball.org. Go to ilovebaseball.org, find out the amazing things they're doing over there. You can sponsor a player in the Dominican Republic for $39 a month to give them everything they need off the field to go along with the talent they have on the field. So check out this number. I want to show you the strikeout per walk ratio. Look at the Seattle Mariners, 3.45. They are second in Major League Baseball. The Houston Astros and the Texas Rangers, same division. They are down in the bottom 5. The Texas Rangers are 26 with a 2.18. The Houston Astros with a 2.11. They are 28th. The team that is on top of the AL West, the Seattle Mariners, is crushing the Texas Rangers and the Houston Astros when it comes to pitching. Now, the Mariners are hovering just a couple games over 500. Yes, you'd like there to be a little bit more of a breakaway. They're on pace to win in the mid-80s when it comes to wins and losses. I feel like that's going to pick up with some of those offensive things we talked about once that stabilizes. But in regards to the division, the Texas Rangers, as I sit here now, recording this, they are sub 500. The Houston Astros are sub 500. But this is what I take away from this. The Texas Rangers and the Houston Astros have some real issues when it comes to pitching. You look at the Mariners, right? So that we talked about the strike throwing ability. The strikeout per walk ratio, the Seattle Mariners are second. They're always hovering around the top 5. They're either second or first literally every day I check when it comes to strikeout to walk ratio. The Texas Rangers are 26th. They're 2.1 strikeouts to walks. That's not good at all. And the Houston Astros, I'm telling you, they got some major issues. You thought when Verlander was going to come back, it was going to clean up. Their strikeout to walk ratio is 28th, 211. Right, the Mariners are 3.45, so they are killing it when it comes to pitching. I said this in the beginning of this, the top trends. I said, if you could choose one or the other, I would take pitching all day long. Now, the hard part to really forecast with this, the Houston Astros, they're not going anywhere. They'll go out, pick up someone, pick up some pitching help. The Texas Rangers, worst bullpen in Major League Baseball. They will go out, they did it last year, and pick up some pieces when it comes to the bullpen, plus they got some starters coming back. So that worries me a little bit. I think the Mariners have to pick up that win-loss pace just a little bit. They're doing some good things right now that could be much better, but they're my 3 takeaways for the first third of the season in this week's edition of the Top Trends. All right, coming up after the break, the big trend around Major League Baseball has been the arm injuries. It's just the topic that won't go away. I don't think it's going to go away for a long time. We have got 3 of my former teammates and 3 former Seattle Mariners who have been through all kinds of injuries. We dive into what's causing these injuries from an MLB level to a youth level. Stick around. If you've got a young ball player in the house, you don't want to miss this coming up right after the break, right here on the Top Step.
I live in Tacoma, and I'm all about the action. From making a run at the tables to multiple pay lines on my favorite machines. Game time. The sportsbook is better than being on the 50-yard line or sitting courtside. And I'm here for it. Emerald Queen Casino, the entertainment capital of the Northwest.
All right, welcome back to the Top Step. We're inside the EQC studios right now. I've got an arm injury panel, a bunch of pros, and they're pros. You know why they're professionals on this topic? Because A, they've pitched in the big leagues, and B, they've all had some form of an arm injury or some sort of arm surgery. So I'm going to go around. First of all, we've got Brandon Morrow, Eric O'Flaherty, David Aardsma, all ex Seattle Mariners, all ex-teammates of mine. Guys, everyone's talking about it, and it's this topic that I'm not saying the arm injuries are not going to go away, but the topic and the talking point of it, the subject keeps coming up over and over and over. When you look at this, and, you know, David, you brought up some numbers earlier, right? It's not like this is just this year alone. There's just a blowout of arm injuries, and it was never like this, right? You rattled off some numbers earlier, the last couple of years, and you mentioned 2014 as well. What were some of the numbers compared to this year?
I'll hit a couple years, like 3 years in particular, 2000, 2014, and 2024. When they're looking at the first 100 days of the season, which is usually when we kind of get that epidemic of guys getting hurt, 9 Tommy John surgeries this year in the first 100 days, 11 in 2014, and 10 in 2000. So we're not necessarily seeing a rise in the Tommy John, and it kind of plays the same numbers play against the minor leagues too. The only difference is 2014 there was 38 Tommy John surgeries in the minor leagues, and only 17 in 2020 and 16 in 2024.
So why is it such a big deal right now? Like, and I'll leave this up to anyone. Why are we talking about it so much right now?
Who got hurt?
2024.
You have starters throwing 100 miles an hour that get hurt that are main guys. You know, it's going to draw a lot more attention to it. I'm trying to remember who else it was. I know Strider blew out. Strider has to have Tommy John or a similar surgery.
Well, when you're looking at 8 of the top 10 hardest throwers in baseball from last year, were all injured. That's the problem. When you're looking at, you know, these guys, obviously DeGrom's a big one from the last couple of years. Hunter Green, Sandy Alcantara, Garrett Cole was hurt. You know, he's still trying to come back. Evaldi, Yuri Perez, Shohei. I mean, just keep going down the list.
You look at that and you think to yourself, okay, it's obviously an issue, and it's something that all of a sudden the pitch clock of recent years. Do you think the pitch clock has anything to do with it? Is it a big factor, small factor? Anything in regards to the pitch clock? What do you guys got on that?
I mean, I tried to throw before I had time to think, so I was always working fast. I don't give it too much credit, but if starting pitchers and guys with credibility are saying it, then I think you got to listen a little bit.
Now, Brandon, you work with the Dodgers currently. You do some stuff with them, and Dave, you've worked with the Blue Jays as well, right? Is this something where with a professional team that they're not that they don't care about it. Obviously, they want to keep their guys healthy, but is it something that Brandon, I'll start with you. They look at it and say, hey, this is a problem. We need to keep our guys on the field. How are we going to adjust this? Or do they, are they trying to come up with solutions in-house to try and fix this issue? Because throwing hard is not going to go away.
Always looking for solutions, right? They're always looking to improve the health of players. But I think with a front office, I mean, it's been this way a long time. Guys get hurt, marquee guys get hurt. It's cost of doing business, and they understand it. And always looking for ways to get healthier. But I think also the things that we have to look at are the ways that they've been trying to improve on field play, and the spin rate and velocity explosions, I think, are probably the first thing to look at.
How hard is it, man, when you go down from a situation where you start second guessing if I'm ever going to come back, if I'm ever going to be 100%, especially shoulders, I feel like more so than TJ's. And the reason I'm asking this is because I'll talk to a 16-year-old and they're like, oh yeah, if I have to have TJ, well, you know what, I miss a year. I'm like, it's not that cut and dry, man. Like, it's just not how it goes. How hard is it coming back from some of these major surgeries?
I was never the same after Tommy John, but people look at it like you're just getting a cavity filled now. Like it's that simple. I don't think it is.
Dave?
I was never the same after my hip. Never the same. I was a guy sitting, averaging 97, 98, just sitting there. And whenever I really wanted it, trying to pitch at 95 and then touching 8, 9, whatever when I wanted.
Yeah. And
to a guy that was battling everything he had for 93. I was never the same. And then the Tommy John obviously kind of flows right with it, but it's the second guessing. It's the feeling. I never had the same feel of my split ever again, and that was arguably my best pitch.
Brandon, what about you, man? I know you've been up and down with injuries all over the place from my time playing with you and then onwards, dude. But how tough is that? Like, and I'm talking about being in Arizona when the team's off wherever, and you're watching them and you feel like you're out of the loop on everything, and then you're second guessing, questioning if you're going to come back.
Yeah, definitely. I spent a lot of time like that down in Florida with the Blue Jays for not just arm injuries, a couple, but oblique down for several months. And it's a grind rehabbing every day like that, being away from the team. Like you said, you're not seeing the guys, you're not feeling the energy from the season or anything like that. I mean, it feels like it's like 3 times as long as it should be each time. I was lucky and came back really good from my shoulder surgery. I would say it took a long time, and I wasn't myself the first year when I came back relieving with the Padres, and then had another off season, was able to have a normal off season, and felt good again after that. But the nerve surgeries got me, and had 2 different surgeries to try and fix that, and nothing ever improved.
I live in Tacoma, and I'm all about the action. From making a run at the tables to multiple pay lines on my favorite machines. Game time. The sportsbook is better than being on the 50-yard line or sitting courtside. And I'm here for it. Emerald Queen Casino, the entertainment capital of the Northwest.
Okay, what's the biggest factor here, right? What's the biggest thing? It's. I don't think it's pitch clock. I honestly just think it's everyone. The bar has been raised so high that you now have to go max effort every time you throw, and front offices are going to tell a AA kid, look, we're going to design this pitch for you, right? It may have more stress on your arm. You're going to throw it 60% of the time, maybe, or we want you throwing 97. If you're not going to be on the radar. We care more about swing and miss than we do, command. Call it that. Like, if that's the way it's going to go, how do you do it? Where do you kind of mitigate this risk and say, all right, the players, the fans want to watch a Spencer Strider. We can keep him on the field longer if we did this. What do we got?
Well, that's a good point that we hadn't talked about, was the way the guys are training now, throwing the ball. Like, we all threw bullpens, our side work. We didn't have pitching labs that we were going into where you were seeing those 1,000 frame per second cameras, that you're doing pitch design where you would work on your breaking ball, throw it, try to get an actual feel of it. But now you're in there ripping sliders, trying to get the spin rate as high as you can, working on a grip change that maybe is just not patterned right for your body, putting a little more stress on your elbow. Those are a lot of things that we weren't doing even, 5-6 years ago, that I think have become really important and really prevalent now, is increasing those spin rates, optimizing your pitch in those labs where every pitch is thrown with game intent, because you can't just flip stuff in there and get real work done. You got to be throwing those balls hard and correctly, right? You got to be spinning it hard.
Eric, what do you got, my man? What's the I'm not going to say the solution, but what's your take on this whole thing? It's not going away. We all know that.
Well, I mean, that's why I brought up the strike zone, because I don't see any other way that guys are going to do what gives you the best odds. And right now, that's the high velocity, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, and same thing with what Brandon was saying about like the training and everything like that. I don't think, like, I watch a lot of these hard throwers, and I don't know, max effort gets used a lot. I don't know if there's, like, Strider's smooth. He's throwing a smooth 100. But the work he's done, his body, for me, is operating at max capacity.
Right.
Throwing 100 miles an hour is just, something's going to break. Like, it's just, I just don't think it's something that you can do long term and stay healthy. I mean, Nolan Ryan's the only guy I can think of that's just thrown, however many thousands of innings and stayed healthy throughout his career. Everybody else you see that sits 100, like, you can book the appointment. So I don't know if there is a solution other than the game changing what it rewards. But if guys have to throw it in that box, I think that you're just going to keep seeing guys try to throw as hard as possible, or train to be as high a velocity thrower as possible. I don't know any other solution there is.
Yeah, Dave, what do you got?
Outside of completely reinventing the game and getting rid of any trackable of a pitch, if we got rid of TrackMan, if we got rid of Hawkeye, we got rid of Rapsodo, and just started training where we're watching the pitch and watching a hitter's reaction, watching our catcher's reaction, having a conversation with the catcher, like, was that a good pitch? Is that an 0-0? Is that an 0-2? What do you got? If we took it all away and we went back to that, we would see a regression in velocity, we would see a regression in spin rate, and an increase in command, and I think we'd actually have more healthier, longer pitching pitchers. We're not going anywhere. It's not changing. There's not a chance in this world. The cat's out of the bag. So the only way I look at it is you start cutting innings. Still cut it down. You're going to see guys where the average is below 5 innings, and that's going to be normal. If 4.1 inning already is pretty much, that's going to be a great inning, a great outing, because we're going to train these guys to face a lineup one time. And that's going to become more and more and more prevalent. And a guy that can get to 6 innings is going to be so rare that let's stop playing the game and just understand that this is what the new baseball will be.
Guys, this has been great. I appreciate the time and all the advice too. So kids, like I said, listen to some major league pitchers. Have all been through arm injuries. They are going to happen. You are going to get arm issues, but have some fun too, especially if you're sub 17 years old. It should be about having some fun and enjoying it too. So guys, I really appreciate it. Hopefully we can do this again at some point. I'm glad we've solved the arm injury crisis. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, special thanks to David Aardsma, Brandon Morrow, and Eric O'Flaherty. Man, that was an epic chat. If you want to see the full-length interview, we go in depth. Make sure you go to YouTube at the Top Step TV. Go subscribe. Go check out the full-length interview. It's pretty amazing too. Like I said, if you have a kid in the house who loves baseball, you don't want to miss it. Or you Little League parents, travel ball parents, make sure you listen up and go check out the full-length interview. All right, before we leave, we have to teach you how to speak Australian in the How to Speak Australian segment, brought to you by Kangaroo and Kiwi. I give you a word, you go over to social media and you try and guess the right answer. I'm going to give you the word, then I'm going to give you a sentence. Give me your best shot. I don't care if it's completely off. It doesn't matter. I want to see if you can speak Australian. So go to at the Top Step TV on Instagram, on Twitter. You can even, in the comments down below, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can even throw it down in there. But make sure you put the hashtag TTSmate. All right. How to Speak Australian, brought to you by the Kangaroo and Kiwi Pub over in Ballard, the best Aussie pub. I go there when I want to have a beer with my mates. The word this week, How to Speak Australian, is crook. Now it's spelled C-R-O-O-K, crook. I'm going to give you a sentence, all right? I'm going to give you a sentence that's going to help you. I tell you what, mate, I pitched a long game and my arm started to feel crook. What do you got? Now, I may be throwing you off just a little bit with that, but you can go check it out. You can Google search it if you want. I don't care. Go to at the Top Step TV on Instagram or Twitter. Put hashtag TTSmate. Give me your best shot. Let me know, and you can win some good giveaways, some gift cards, some game tickets. Go check it out. All right, mates, that's all we got. I'm feeling a bit crook. Just gave it away. I'm feeling a bit crook, so I'm going to see you next week, and we'll see you right here on the Top Step.